All right. Hello, everybody. I believe we're live streaming tonight. It's good to have you with us. If Now we had class last week. Did we have class last week?
Yeah, but the storms kind of
Oh,
interrupted.
I got thrown out
You
last
and
week.
you and Thomas got knocked out, and
Yeah. Yeah.
the rest of us
You
just
were
kind
naughty. That while you were got.
Yeah. The computers went off, and when they came back on, um, it did not recognize my Google reentry code. And they were just blank, like you just bought them off the floor. And I thought, oh man, what am I going to do? So when all else fails, restart. So I restarted them finally. Had to wait, I don't know how long before they would even take a command, but they're up and running now. Hello, everybody. It's good to have everybody with us tonight. Those of you listening on Power Faith Radio, it's good to have you with us. And last week they kindly heard a recording. I'm not sure what recording they heard, but they got a recording. But it's good to have you with us. Those of you watching on YouTube, we appreciate it so much. Maybe you're watching where somebody had reposted it somewhere. We appreciate that. Come on over to YouTube. While you're there, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell. You'll be notified every time a new video goes up. And you can find all the links to the class in a Simple Walk Facebook page. While you're there, while you're listening, if you got any questions, you can send questions to outreachnoah@gmail.com. Terry, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good.
How about
Probably
greeting?
probably more on the good than the pretty.
Oh, well,
Have you noticed at least like the last 2 years at least, the storms that really blow through here hits the middle of the week?
Yeah.
I mean, we missed several classes last year because of that. And here we've got storms coming in tomorrow. Some of it, I think, starting to come this way tomorrow evening, Friday, and supposed to have some rough ones this weekend. But it seems like they hit the middle of the week almost all the time right here in eastern Tennessee. It's just interesting. Just, I guess, the time, the way it flows across the country. I know whatever my brother gets out in Oklahoma, generally about 2 days later, day and a half, 2 days later, we're getting it.
Yeah. And Bob's getting it, and he's shipping it on down to here. So we'll get it the day after Bob.
You keep it up in Kansas City. We'll root for you. So, but yeah, no kidding. This one's, I've not actually looked at it, but everything I'm hearing, this is supposed to be a rough storm that's coming across the country right now. That I've heard there probably going to be some tornadoes spun by this puppy. So hopefully, everybody's safe and, no horrible damages is done with these tornadoes. They can be rough this time of year, springtime, especially here in the South, because we're starting to actually. They mentioned a year or so ago that our area here in Chattanooga they're saying that the tornado alley has shifted east a little bit, and we're kind of on the edge of it.
So, well, I know Pollen Alley is right here.
We ain't got there. All the cars not green yet, but give it a few days and everything will be green.
We've got everything blooming here. Bradford pears and the little red bud trees, I call them, and tulip trees are budding, and yellow bells are budding. And this morning, as I was going down the road, the yellow and green pollen was rolling off the road. Said,
okay. Y'all gotten it earlier than we have.
Yeah.
It didn't hit us like that because Chattanooga gets bad because we're surrounded by all these mountains and forest. And it doesn't let the wind don't get to blow it out. It just blows it down right on top of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyhow, greetings, everyone. Glad to see everyone here tonight. In our Zoom room tonight, of course, we've got Scotty and Amuela and Ronald and Bob and Veronica. And as Scott has said, if you want to come and join us in the Zoom room, going over to a Simple Walk, or also on Ronald's, what is that, Australians, how you say it, Ronald?
Noah Hides of Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah, if you're over in that part of the world, go in there. Scotty's got the links there as well. And you're welcome to come and join us into the Zoom room. You don't have to have your camera on, but you can come in and join us, and if you want to. And Scotty, you got knocked out last week, so it was a little bit of a rough ride around here, and we appreciate everybody that hung on. And if you watched the YouTube video, you probably seen, Cripple over here struggling through without his engineer.
I thought you done real good. I got to finally watch it on YouTube, but I thought you done real good.
But you don't know how much you need someone until that someone's gone.
I'll take that as a compliment.
Yeah, I'll take it as a compliment. And we missed, not being able to have the radio station on last week as well. It was obviously that, the group that follows and comes and joins us on the radio was very, very, very much missed last week. So we hope you had a good week and got to catch up on what we covered last week. And we're just going to continue on this week. Last week we covered the words, let's see, bara and Elohim, I believe. And then this weekend we're going to cover the heavens and the earth, and I'll get into the Hebrew on that here in just a few moments.
All right. Hello, everybody. Ready? I believe we're live
sorry
tonight. If something's not working right. That did not work right at all.
Scotty's over poking buttons.
I'm trying to, my computer is, there's something happening here. Oh, goodness. Well, just keep talking for a minute, Terry, because everything is, I got stuff that's come up on my page everywhere.
Oh, no. Okay, well, just a little introduction for tonight. We are going to continue on. We're going to, the last few words of the first sentence of the Torah. We've covered, I'm going to say it here in Hebrew, Bereshit bara Elohim. Tonight we're going to cover Es Hashemayim va'es haaretz. And it's going to be just a little bit short on that because I just wanted to cover this, what we're going to cover tonight. And we're going to start the next verse next week, God willing. But like I said last week, if you have any questions on what we've been covering, just get them to Scotty through outreachnoah@gmail.com. And he'll put things together and we can discuss these things. And Scotty, matter of fact, if you've got some tonight, we can go ahead and talk, cover a few things tonight up front if we need to. We got plenty of time for that as well. I know I didn't get a chance to message you that this week. It's been a crazy week. Scotty, our Lexus manager's on vacation, and the two guys running the show over there, one's got jury duty. So I've been on standby at any time to go over from Toyota to Lexus to help the one guy on the counter. And so I had to do that yesterday. And today was just like I wasn't sure if I was going to have to. So it's been a little crazy for me this week, not knowing where I'm going to be at any time. So that's the reason why you can probably hear me. I'm just a little bit tired because just having to bounce around between. Actually, the last week I've had to cover almost every counter that we have, from pre-owned to Lexus and Toyota and retail.
Do you have to wear a different hat every time you go to a different counter?
No, I put on. I leave my Toyota shirt on when I go over there. I've got my shirt, but I don't change it. But it's a different ball game over there. I mean, it's the same but different. Customer base is different. The way things are set up, but it's not been a dull week. So I'll be glad when David doesn't have to go on jury duty unless he gets actually called to go to the court case. It may then extend, but anyhow, Scotty, you about ready for Tzedakah?
I am ready. Right. As always, we appreciate everybody that's participated in this week's Tzedakah, and we'll just get right into it. We always want to give Tzedakah for our main teacher, Pesach and Shira Sherbo, and then we have Pamela Steffi. Veronica, have you got to talk to Pamela Steffi to see how she's doing?
Yep, she's slowly recovering from the operation, and so she's doing all right. And I'll be actually seeing her. I'll be heading out that way in about just over a week.
Okay, good deal. And we got Jeremy Kibbe on our Tzedakah list tonight, and we also have Nadine Akins. We're going to continue to have her. She's recovering well. And then we got Harleen Hool. Harleen Hool is on our Tzedakah list tonight. And Janice Brandon. Did I get that right, Ronald?
She's doing a lot better. I was speaking to her at the weekend at the women's group, and yeah, she's feeling more comfortable. She actually looked better through the
Great.
Zoom, as opposed to what she's looked at lately. So the pain's dissipating more, and she's feeling much more comfortable and cheerful.
Okay, great, great, great. Also, we have, I've still got Christina Hall on our Sadaka list tonight, and then Wendell and Mary Parsons. We've just got them on our Sadaka list tonight. We've reached out a couple times, but we're gonna try to get a hold of them. And then also William and Tina Lyons is on our Sadaka list tonight. While we're giving these names, you might want to write some of these down, and maybe as you give charity in the next week or the weekend, you might think of some of these names. Also, Ronald Dickman and his sister. And Ronald, I'm gonna have to get you to say your sister, but how you doing, Ronald? Then tell us about your sister.
I'm doing fine at the moment, so keep fingers crossed that it continues that way. My sister, not so good, but her doctor has always had the thought that the spot on her lung are related to her severe back pain, but the specialists don't agree. But there's been a bit of a turn that the spots enlarged and changed colour and texture, so she's still
Okay.
I think this week or next week she's got a 40-minute scan, so pretty intensive one to try and work out what's going on in the lung. So not
Okay.
promising.
All right. Well, we're going to continue to have y'all on our Sadaka list. And also, somebody, Emuela, always sends in $1 with your name on it, giving that into the Sadaka. They also send in $1 for Veronica Port and for Thomas Schaus. And let's remember Thomas, he's not here tonight. And also for Warwick Marshall, we're giving Sadaka for Warwick tonight. And Chrissy Seaton. How's Chrissy doing, Ronald?
I haven't spoken to her this week. I'll be speaking to her later today, but so far, from last conversation, she's doing pretty good. Yeah, she's doing well.
Okay, good deal. Also, Diana Gardner is on our Sadaka list tonight. She got a hold of us this week, and she gets to watch the YouTube. She don't get to be here live, but she watches it, and she wanted us to add her to our Sadaka list. And also, Gene Reagan is on our Sadaka list tonight. And Larry Beck and family, I've got him on our Sadaka list tonight. And then on our blessed memory part of our Sadaka list, and this may be a name you want to write down, is Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones. We're giving this for his merit tonight. Would you take a few minutes and just help us pray? Hear our voice, Adonai, our God, Father of mercy. Have compassion on us and accept our prayers with compassion and favor. For we know that you are a God who hears prayers and supplications. You are our King. Do not send us away empty-handed. Favor us and answer us and listen to our prayers. Amen. All right, Terry, are you about ready to get started? I think I'm going to put you on speaker view and throw you in front of the lions and let you.
Well, Scotty, have you gotten any conversations or any questions, anything we can cover a little bit from the last couple of weeks when we got started? Because I know we've kind of covered a lot, but we've not covered everything. There's no way to cover everything in what we're doing. I'm just kind of hitting the highlights with these that kind of really pertains to us and what we can learn from them. But go ahead, Scotty.
So, anytime you begin in this way and break things down, you always have people that are really hungry and listen. Then you always got the unteachable, those that want to, all they want to do is argue. So I'm just going to tell you, no, I don't have any questions to bring up to add to somebody's soapbox tonight. So I'm just.
Oh,
I've just those people, it's hard to discuss anything with them. And there's a rabbi that I listen to during the week, and I like something he said a couple of months ago. There's some people that um, they're not going to listen. Uh, so should you
Yeah.
waste your time
Okay.
doing them
Well,
and losing the others?
This is just the first sentence, and we've not really gotten into some things yet. We're fixing, in the near future as we go through. We're going to be getting into some, for those kind of folks, it's going to be a very, very hard time because we're going to be getting into some Hebrew and some things that will be actually going opposite against what a lot of us were taught. Because we're going to be getting into the original language and the teachings that goes back, over 3,000 years. And I don't say that as to cause controversy. I'm bringing information. This is what I'm doing. Not to argue, not to come, just bringing information that those that are hungry and really wanting to know the Creator, the God of Israel, because He tells us in His Torah, He says to know Me. He never asks us to believe in Him. He asks us to know Him. Right. And to study what He spoke to Moses is one way of getting to know Him, because He chose His words, specifically in what He, gave Moses to write down and to pass down, and oral as well. And there's a passage in Exodus, I was just reading it today, I'm not going to bring it up tonight, that shows you that he gave the written and the oral instructions. It's what it actually says in this one particular passage in Exodus. But tonight we're going to continue on. And in the English, let me flip back over here, not flop. Sound like a fish on a seashore. I'm in a different book tonight here, so there we go. Here's the front of it. Okay. Like I said before, we have covered in the English, in the beginning, God created. That's what we've covered over the last few weeks. In the Hebrew, again, that's Bereshis bara Elohim. We covered that. Tonight we're going to cover what's in the English, the heavens and the earth. But the first part of that is there's a word that's not translatable. That's not translated in the English. It's not there. But it's an important part of the first verse because it's a connector word, and it's used throughout the whole Torah and even the prophets. And that word is the word ace, or is how it's pronounced in Ashkenaz, but eight. It's an aleph tav. And there are some religious fringe groups out there that likes to get in here and make word pictures of what this verse says, especially in this area here. The problem is they can only do it right here in this one verse, and they can rape this verse to make it say what they want to do. But when you go to the rest of the Torah, it doesn't fit. So that's a red flag. When cults take parts of things to make things say what they want them to say, but it doesn't work anywhere else, that's a red flag that they're adding something to God's word that doesn't exist in the original language. But briefly tonight, I'm going to be using my source material tonight is the Art Scroll Ramban, Rabbi Moshe ben Nachmanides, or ben Nachman, one of the great Torah teachers and sages of Israel. I'm going to be using his discussion and teaching on this word ace, the aleph tav. It's between the word Elohim and Hashemayim. And I'm just going to cover this a little bit because I went through all my materials, and I feel like, I've got one that really gets deep into it, and that's not really what we need for class. But the Ramban, what I'm going to cover tonight, real short in this passage, he says it all in it. And so the first word we're looking here, it's one that's not in the English, and it's not really a translatable word because it's a connector word, and it has purposes. of why it's used in the Hebrew language, in its linguistic, and grammatical styles. So the Ramban, Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, explains that the function of the word eight or ace, and shows how it is to be understood in the context of our verse in light of his, in light of what he was talking about earlier. He was talking about the earth in his stuff, but he gets over into our next verse that we're going to start next week. So I'm skipping that aspect of it. But he goes on, he says, the word ace is like the phrase, the essence of a thing, i.e., that very thing itself. The sages expound that this word, asserting that it always is meant to include something extra not mentioned in the verse explicitly. He says, for it is related to the word atah, has come. The word atah has come. As in the verse, morning has come and also night, Isaiah 21. The Ramban goes on, he says, and so too, in explaining our verse, the sages have said that the term ace is used with reference to the heavens, which includes, and this is the important part, when he says ace hashemayim, and the heavens. It includes the sun, the moon, the stars, and the constellations of the heavens. And where it goes, va'ace, the heavens and the earth, because again, this word is not translated. The word ace here includes the earth, the trees, the vegetation, and the Garden of Eden, all which are located on the earth. These things enumerated by the sages includes all creations that have a physical form. And so that's what this word here is. It's just a connector word. And some of you, maybe the first time you've heard that because maybe you've not ever seen the Hebrew, or even if you saw the Hebrew, didn't know what that word was there. But if you've had a transliteration, and then you saw the Hebrew, you'll see that, okay, there's a word there that's not translated. And I've heard it called by the rabbi sometimes, it's not that it's the untranslatable word. It's not that it's not translated. It's just, it's not translated. It's something in the Hebrew language that connects. This one here where it says Elohim, let me see right here, where it says Elohim Ace Hashemayim. So we see here that it is connecting the Creator, and we're going to see a little bit of that here in a minute, with heaven. And then we see the heavens is being connected with the earth. So we have this connection between the creation of God, the Creator, the heavens, and the earth are being drawn together. They're all connected, and there's a purpose for that. See here where I was going to pick up at, because I was going to go through some of Rabbi Hirsch's, but it got deep. And I'm like, this is really not a good one. Maybe something we can do a little bit later, because he actually breaks down. He goes into the Psalms and shows some things there that we could probably spend the next couple of hours on. Looks like somebody's trying to come in there, Ronald. Oh, it's Nancy. So, let's see if there's anything I need to. I'll read this here from Hurst concerning the word ace there as a connector word. Rabbi Hirsch, in his explanation of it, because the Ramban sometimes may not be understandable, he said it presents the object. This word ace presents the object in its characteristics, its effects, relationships through which the nature of the object is expressed. Now, I'm probably muddying the waters here a little bit, Scotty, because it's the way the way it's described. And Rabbi Hirsch says, and by which the object can be recognized, as it were the characteristics, effects, and the relationships of the object serve as its identifying marks, the means by which it is known. And by what he's saying here is what I just read from the Ramban, when it's talking about its identifying marks. So we have Eis Hashemayim, which is the heavens, which it's identifying marks, the sun, the moons, the stars, the constellations, the galaxies, all of that is the identifying marks that is connected with heavens. And then the identifying marks and the characteristics with the earth being the vegetation, the animals, the seas, the waters, everything that is connected to the earthly realm. So in this passage, it's giving us everything and talking about these two words in this passage, Eis, which is not translated, is showing this connecting in relationship between all of the creation that God had done in the first part of the verse. Any questions on that, Scotty? Okay. And Rabbi Hirsch goes on when he's talking about Hashemayim Vaharetz. And he starts about Shemaim. There is some really, really, really interesting stuff. And he gets into Psalms 104. And I went over everything again this morning and about Psalms 104. Actually, I think it would make a good study by itself instead of putting it in with this. Because Psalms 104, David's talking about the heavens and the earth. And some of the words here, he connects the word Shemaim here in verse 1 of Genesis to Psalms 104:4. And that, I think, would make a really interesting just little study of itself in the future. But Rabbi Hirsch goes on and says, the word Shemaim in our verse chapter 1, teaches us that we should not expect here revelations about the creation of wondrous super-terrestrial worlds. The extraterrestrial world is mentioned and considered only in relation to Earth. See, he doesn't get into the other planets. We know here in the creation week, he does mention the sun and the moon because it's directly in connection with the earth. And so Rabbi Hirsch, who lived 200 years ago, before we even had the telescopes that we have today that can reach out there, like I think the James Webb and the Hubble, that we've learned so much about, space, more than we have probably in the last 100 years put together in the last few years, just with those two telescopes. Rabbi Hirsch is in his wisdom here is showing us that the word Shemaim here is only mentioning that which has a direct relationship with the earth. The earth is its main object, the heavens and the earth. And the heavens is mentioned in relationship to the earth. Rabbi Hirsch goes on, he says, God's Torah, true to its name, is Torah, which means instruction. Because it's really interesting how this first word, in the beginnings, God created the heavens and earth, is an instruction. Not just a historical, declaration or recording of the event of creation. It's an instruction. The only reason why that's in the Torah, because there's an instruction there for us. And many of us may have never thought about, how many times we talk, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. What can God be instructing us on there? It shows us our way in the world and guides our steps in the hands of the living. The Torah wants us to understand ourselves, and our world, and wants us to attribute our existence to God the Creator. So this is an instruction, one of the instructions of Genesis chapter 1:1, to attribute our existence to God the Creator. I'm reading a book right now on it's the readings of moral philosophy. And I started this one section today. Well, I was reading a little bit before I clocked in at work. And this section is dealing with the subjective view of ethics and morals, right and wrong, that it's all subjective. It's explaining that there is no right or wrong because it's subjective upon whoever believes whatever they want to do, that there's actually no right and wrong. They're trying to explain morals and ethics without the connection with the Creator who gave it to us. And so I've not ever really read this kind of material before, and I'm finding it interesting because I'm doing some studies for a writing I'm wanting to do. So I've got this book on moral philosophy and reading it and meditating on what is being said by these so-called great minds of moral philosophy and compared with what God gave us in Genesis of the way of the land, Derek Eretz, and the 7 laws of Noah, because this is where we get our morals and our ethics. And we're going to see that in Genesis 2:16. That's where it begins. But to read the other side, I've never read the other side's viewpoints. So it's kind of interesting in my mind that they're trying to attribute everything without God. And here we get what Rabbi Hirsch is telling us, that one of the essence of, in the beginning, God created. God is wanting us, through these few words that we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks, to attribute our existence to Him. That's one of its first purposes, as an instruction. Just not a historical document of, history of what happened. He goes on, he says, the Torah says to us, at the sight of our heaven and at the sight of our earth, this heaven with its countless stars and this earth with its countless creatures, this whole boundless diversity unites in God's hand into one world. He is the one who created this world in its earliest times and brought it into its primordial existence. With this first verse, Rabbi Hirsch says, the Torah has already revealed that the principle and fundamental truth, the principle and fundamental reality that totally transforms our view of the world and ourselves. He goes on, he says, this single verse would have sufficed to teach us to view the world as God's world and ourselves as God's creatures, and to recognize the world and ourselves created by God as God's own sacred possession. This single verse would have sufficed to teach us our duty to do God's will in God's world with all of our energies, which also belong to Him. I'm going to read that again. This single verse, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, would have sufficed to teach us to view the world as God's world and ourselves as God's creatures, and to recognize the world and ourselves created by God as God's own sacred possessions. We belong to him. We are his sacred possessions. That's what this verse is teaching. This single verse would have sufficed to teach us our duty. Not only do we see that we are his sacred possession, created by him. Now this verse instructs us in the area of duty. Because we are his sacred creature, because we are his sacred possession, we have a duty to do God's will in God's world with all of our energies, which also belong to God. That's a mouthful about one verse, isn't it, Scotty? But the Torah is not content merely to make a general announcement in one single verse that God, the Creator, created the world in one utterance of creation. The sole purpose of this entire first book, so it's going to be new to some of you, but once you study with us a while, you'll begin to understand what all this means. Because we've talked about this in the past in relating other areas that we have covered. But the sole purpose of this entire book, the book of Genesis, which relates to the origins of the world, of human history, and of the people of Israel, is to introduce the law that is destined to be given to Israel. Again, this was spoken to Moses at Mount Sinai. Israel was given the Torah. We've learned that it's their heritage, it's their possession, it's their belonging. It was given to them by God. King David in Psalms 147 tells us that he only gave it to Israel and no one else. But Rabbi Hirsch goes on and says, but for this reason, because see, they're the caretaker of the instruction of God. For this reason, the Torah will now present to us all the individual phenomena of creation in all their diversity, and teaches us to perceive the formative law-giving Word of God, not only in the world as a whole, but in each and every species and groups of species. And he's going to cover more of this when we get to verses 11 and 12. You're going to understand what he's talking about here, because everything God made has a purpose, has its own set of rules of how it is to exist upon this planet and how it is to exist in the heavens. And it doesn't just stop with animals and plants. It's also for us humans. It's for Israel and it's for the nations. And he breaks that even down when we get to verses 11 and 12. But here he tells us from this verse, we can see that God also says the Torah and the book of Genesis is to teach us to perceive the formative law-giving Word of God, not only in the world as a whole, but to every individual species, groups, and groups of species. That this should enable us to ascend to the lofty heights of the perception expressed by David to the music of a heart, since every one of God's creations everywhere in his kingdom, each in its own particular sphere and state of existence, each one in their own state of existence has a duty and a responsibility for God, which he has assigned us. And it says, each in its own particular sphere and state of existence does God's will and obeys his word. Psalms 104. We too are to obey the law ordained for us by God, and in this obedience to God, we find all of the blisses of our life. When we discover and we find what God has pertains for us, each of us. See, when the majority of humanity out here has ever held a Bible in their hands, they've read it as if everything was written to them. No, everything is not written to everyone. God gives us that example with the nation of Israel. There's 12 tribes, and within that tribes, there are multiple duties that some of the Jews have to do that some of the others doesn't. And if some Jew goes over into another area that he wasn't commanded, it could cost him his life. And it's the same thing with us. So he gives us a perfect example with what God does with Israel, he does with the nations as well. They have their part, we have our part. And they are instructed to share with us and to teach us what we are to do, what is our part of the kingdom. It's not that we're being left out. We have a sacred duty. We may not be observing all the things that the Jewish people observe as the priests of the nations. And some people, that's hard for them. They want to do pieces of this. No, we have a sacred duty to do our part. And when we do our part, it's just as lofty. The Rambam actually says in the Mishnah Torah, he says, when a non-Jewish person accepts upon himself his commandments, the laws of Noah upon himself, and he accepts them and he does them because the Creator has commanded us, then we stand as the pious of the nations, and we are also seen as like the high priest of Israel. We have our part to play, and this is part of what we're going to be learning as we go through Genesis. And like what we've been learning when we've been going through, the Derek Eretz, the law of the land, we've been going through the laws of Noah and all that. All of this is tying it together. Is we have a duty before God. And when we do this, we will find a blissful life. And this is what we get from Genesis chapter 1:1. In the beginning, God's created the heavens and the earth. Go ahead, Scotty. Because we start next in the next verse. Now, we're not going to be going through every verse word for word like we did this one. Some of them we will, some we won't. There's just going to be some that we're going to go through. There'll be a little bit there we're going to pull out, but they lead up to these primaries. There's some primary passages that we are fixing to come up to in Genesis 1 and Genesis 2, Genesis 3, Genesis 4. There's some real big primary stuff that we're going to be coming up through these next few chapters. And you might want to put your seatbelt on when we get into some of these, because it's amazing. Some of y'all might want to jump up and holler and scream. I don't know. Sometimes I do. When I come across certain things that God shows me and I see what he has said, to Moses some 3,000 years ago on a mountain, and the things that we didn't know that God said to us, that's amazing. It can change your life. Go ahead, Scotty.
So, Terry, if someone wanted to kindly follow along, what is the main book you're reading out of? Are you reading out of a couple of different commentaries?
Well,
the main textual book.
The main books that I didn't read tonight. The main books I've been using for this study is the Arch Scroll Tanakh series, Bereshit Genesis. This is a 2-volume set right here. The book of Genesis. That's all on the book of Genesis through the Arch Scroll Tanakh series. That's we won't be going through the whole book. We're mostly what I'm going to be covering is pretty much up through chapter 9 and probably some into chapter 18, because it pertains a lot to us that we need to learn for our individual lives. Those are really, this first volume is going to be the main, because it goes up through I don't remember what chapter that goes up through. And then my other one is my favorite, Rabbi Hirsch, Humish. I have his 5 books, which is called Humish the Five. This is the book of Genesis. This is where it breaks down. To be able to really study this, you'll need to know some Hebrew, because in the midst of an English sentence, he'll have Hebrew.
Yeah.
And I have to go back myself, because I don't read it and I don't pronounce it every day like I used to for about 7 years. In some certain studies I was doing, but I retained a lot. For an old Tennessee boy, I've retained quite a bit. And plus I've got some book helps, and plus I've got some Jewish friends. I've actually, my buddy in New Jersey, I'll take a picture. I said, okay, I need help with this. I said, I'm pretty sure I understand it, and I'll take a picture of it and I'll text it to him, and he'll text it back to me. He goes, oh, this is this. Da, 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 da. I said, okay, I thought it was that, or he'll teach me something new on it. When I get into some of the Hebrew from Rabbi Hirsch, I've got, and he was born and raised outside of Jerusalem, so Hebrew is his native tongue. I've actually sent him one time. I was doing some research, and I come across, I think, this one particular word in a sentence and the way it was being used. And I messaged it to him, and he says, I can't help you with that one. I said, why? He says, you have to understand that this is part of our language that we speak from birth, and there's things because of your language. And sometimes you can't explain it in a simple matter. And so he said, this was one of those times that he goes, we would have to sit down and have a discussion about that for you to be able to grasp what that one word is saying to you right there at that place, because it's more in thought than it is in black and white. And so you I recommend Hirsch. I love him. I love him to death. If he was alive today, I'd sit at his feet and thank him, because I've learned so much about me as part of God's creation through him that I haven't through anybody else. And plus these blue books, as you can see right here, that's his collective writings. It was one of those that gets into Psalms that I thought about getting into tonight. And I'm like, no, I'd like to take a slow time with that one. Even though it's only about 4 paragraphs, he gets into just, I think it's Psalms 104:4. He gets into that one verse and connects it with the word Shemayim here in Genesis 1. And he gets into talking about the waters above the waters and the waters below the waters. And you can see Bob, he knows where I'm going with that. So talks about the worlds outside of our galaxies that are still covered in water, like our Earth was at the beginning. They are still sitting in the state of where our Earth was at, in Genesis chapter 2. So he kind of gets into some stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't really pertinent for tonight, because really tonight was to learn that the first verse is actually an instruction. And none of us have probably ever seen that before, that it was an instruction. And what it is instructing us is to know that God is the creator. We are his cherished creation. And through that, we have a duty to obey his law. Because even the energy it takes to go out and do a good deed, the energy it took for you to hold that door open for that little old lady coming out of Lowe's belongs to him. And that's what the first verse is teaching us. So go ahead, Scott.
No, that's good. I just sponging it in. I think everything was great, and we really don't have anybody really asking questions. Of course, we got those same old people that, what about this? How would you explain this? And we're not even there yet. So it's
right. Yeah. Wait till we get to some key verses here in the next few weeks. Scotty, you're gonna get bombarded.
That's what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start throwing it in the chat. That way everybody can see it.
Oh, I can't see it, but it doesn't matter. You send the emails to us. We're going to come now. Again, some of the things we're going to be getting into, some have never been taught, never known. It is not the point about putting anything down, what someone has believed, what they've been taught, because all of us have been in those same boats. We're looking at this as information. We're looking at this as information that's there, that is for us to learn from, not to squabble over.
Yeah.
It's just information for us to learn from that will better your life, better your relationship with God, better your relationship with man. And that's really the big sole purpose of what Scotty and I try to do through Outreach Noah is we're bringing information from the Creator that's meant for the nations of the world to help perfect the world, to help repair the world and make it a better place for every human being.
You know, Terry, I think that's part of the issue with a lot of people, because if you are presenting anything, even if it's just knowledge, you're trying to present knowledge. Some people look at that as if you are coming against their belief because you're not talking about their belief. And
Right.
it's not so much that this is talking about pro or con on belief. This is just presenting truth that's in the text. It's not presented for any kind of debate. It's not presented
Right.
to prove or disprove anything other than we're taking a dive into the text.
Yeah, it's kind of like our guide when I got to go to Israel in 2003. It was a friend of mine took me on, paid for my trip to go with him. A little bit of not a long story, but don't really need to share the whole thing with it yet. But the main thing is that it was a solidarity tour. Our guide was an archaeologist. He's an international known archaeologist. He is so well respected by the nation, the government of Israel, that when Neil Armstrong came to Israel, the government hired him to be his personal guide.
Mm.
And one of the things that Ronnie said, and I'm going to kind of apply what Ronnie, I think his name was Ronnie Winters, our guide, instructed us. He said, when we're going over to these places that we're about to go in these next 7 days, he says, I'm going to give you an archaeological tour. I'm going to tell you what the evidence tells us, the facts of this place, this time, or whatever belief or tradition that you have, because there was 20 of us from all kinds of different religions. I mean, we had Armenians and we had Greek Orthodox. We had different people that was in our tour group. And he says, whatever beliefs or traditions that you have about a specific place that we visit, that's up to you. That's between you and God. What I'm going to show you is what we know, what the earth is telling us, what the artifacts is telling us, what the history of the place is telling us, what we do know that is actual facts about things. He said, I'm not going to bring up religion. I'm not going to bring up traditions. That's your business, not mine. And so I'm making that statement.
Yeah.
I'm going to be bringing up some facts of what the Torah says. If it's different from what you've been taught, then that's okay, but that's between you and God. But I want to bring you on a tour of some places here in Genesis. I want to show you some interesting things that we do know.
Yep.
And tradition, belief, and faith is up to you, not up to us. That's not what we're bringing. How's that, Scotty?
That's great. That's great. That's great. All right, Terry, we've been right at almost an hour, so I'm going to get to go lock my gates early tonight, you think?
Yeah.
You know, we're getting back into that time where it gets, since time changed, it now gets darker later, so I don't have the opportunity to lock the gate, which it only happens 1 month out of the year where I get to lock the gate, before we start the meeting. And so I'm going to go lock my gates.
Still kind of like, I think it was the statement made by Native American. Only the white man can think that he can cut a foot off a rope and add it to the other end, that he's made a longer rope. I gotta agree with our Native brothers and sisters. Some people just ain't got it. But I've heard, it was interesting. I've heard, I think it was a statement made by our president that he wasn't going to touch the subject because there's actually been almost an equal divide, that there's people wanting to stay and people not wanting to, based on, because the ones who don't they don't like the facts of the kids, in the darkness and different things like that. I don't know what all that means anymore because I don't have kids at home. But I grew up was being told it had to deal with the farms, that it had to deal with the farmers, because I grew up in farm country. So that was the word that was used there, that it dealt with the people having to go out to the fields and how it affected the planting seasons and the time that they got to spend in the field doing their work. But that's, Kentucky farmers.
When I was a little boy, I remember being at my grandparents. They had some pretty good sized gardens, and I remember we went to bed at usually the same time every night. And during the summer times, it was daylight outside. I mean, we was in bed and it was daylight outside. And then it was just, I would remember laying there and it was dark, and I'd think, now, wasn't it daylight yesterday?
Bob is showing us something here.
Bob, what are you showing?
He's showing us something scientific. He's going to get my truck on.
This is a book, the Ar Yom. It's a halakha book, and it's all about the how to tell what time it is. It's absolutely amazing. It's an amazing book, and the reason the days are different times of the year is because the tilt of the axis, and there's not much we can do about that, but we try to help. In the summertime, we figure, okay, no one's awake at 4:00 in the morning, so we take the 4:00 in the morning, we put it the later part, and then people get to stay up later. But the winter time is nothing you can do because that's just the way it is. Sorry.
Yeah.
Terry said something about Native American. We had this, I called him Chief. When I was a little boy, back up in the mountains, we had this gentleman I cannot remember. I called him Chief all the time. And I'd ask him a serious question, Bob. I'd say, and I was a little boy, I'd say, hey, what do you think about so-and-so? He'd go, And he'd turn around and walk away. So just, So, all right, I'm going to bring us to a close before we get myself in trouble. So, everybody, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. Appreciate you so much. And if good Lord willing, we'll be back here next Wednesday night. And pray for Veronica. She's on the road traveling. What are you now? The traveling goy? Did I say that right?
Wandering Goy.
The Wandering Goy. Okay. And she'll be in our neck of the woods come this weekend. So we'll get to see her and philosophize with a well-known artist, a book writer, an author.
A published author.
Yeah, a published author. So everybody, we will see you next week. Bye-bye.
As Thomas would say, later.
Later, yeah.